Hello, everybody. Alright then. I think I'm live. I think I'm live. Correcto. Perfect. There's some delay on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. But I think I'm ready to go. Continue to LinkedIn. Okay. Happening now. So, I'll just post the link as well. Hello.
YouTube as well. But I think I'm ready to go. Continue to LinkedIn. Okay.
Hello. Echo. Is there still echo? Chirag? Patil? I'm sorry about that. There shouldn't be any more. Is there still some echo? Let me know. There shouldn't be any more. Let me know. So the first day we had, there's still echo? You can still hear it? Why is that? That shouldn't be the case. Is it still there? Can you just say, confirm?
Why is that? That shouldn't be the case.
Well, I can't hear any echo here. Um,
Hello.
oh, YouTube has echo. You're right. You're right. Sorry about this. Just 1 second. Let me sort this out. Sorry about this. Just 1 second. Can you hear me now? Is it better?
I'm sorry about that.
Is it better now? The echo?
Sorry about this. Just one
Hello,
second.
hello, Rahul. Can you hear me now? Oh,
Is it better?
this should be good, right? It's solved.
I'm sorry about that.
Is it better now? The echo?
Sorry about this. Just one
Hello,
second.
hello, Rahul.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Is it better?
this should be good, right? It's solved.
Is it better now?
Perfect. Now it's good. So let's go. It's not. Rethan says it's not. I don't know what that means. Just clarify. Mohammed Javed, yes. Perfect. Everything is okay. Just say yes if everything's okay. Rahul, now it should be good. Everything is good. Everything is good. LinkedIn. Perfect. Yes, LinkedIn is great too. So we should begin, right? We just set it up in like less than 6 minutes. First day it took 15, then it took some 7. Now we're at 6 minutes or so, 5 minutes. We're making progress. So we should begin. Perfect. Ba-bum bum, ba-bum bum 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 bum, ba-bum bum 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 bum. All right, all right, all right. So we will begin. Bum 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 bum. Yes, it's good. Perfect. There is second double sound 1 second later. I hope that's not the case anymore, Racy Bhavik. Because it's good now, Chirag says. So we'll begin. 1, 2, 3, go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We are having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We are working hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our wives, our husbands, our friends, everybody. Not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. They just got better, ladies and gentlemen, with Thinker's Frequency. We're going to be on the journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Like, imagine a fun session where insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis, happen right before you start your day. Well, it's on. But before we begin, I'd like you to take a sip. In fact, we'll all have a sip together. It's called simultaneous sip. It's supposed to be very lucky. For the simultaneous sip, all you need is a cup or mug or glass, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having coffee. It's cold. So, and there we go for the simultaneous sip. Couldn't get any better. Did you take the sip yourself? I hope you did. I hope you did. It's so good. I never think it can get any better, but it does. So let's begin. Today is a big day for the Indian startup ecosystem. 3 very, very big items are here. One is Unacademy founders are dropping out. Well, that's no news. They were trying to drop out. But what they were trying to do before was selling Unacademy to Allen. And they were looking at a valuation of $800 million. And at the time, I had written a viral piece stating that $800 million is not possible for Unacademy for a few reasons. And those reasons were that Unacademy has declining revenues, flat revenues, and the latest revenues of Unacademy were 110 million, but at a loss of 76 million. And despite no growth, in fact, negative growth and negative net margins, what Unacademy had was 150 million in cash and reserves. So 150 million is okay, but what else does the business get its value from? Because right now it's a declining revenue, there's no growth. Loss making businesses can still be valuable if they are continually growing, but it's not growing. In fact, it's declining, and it's not being able to generate net, you know, pat. So, on what basis is it trying to get a 6 revenue multiple? 6 revenue multiple of 6 on a 110 revenue stage when it's not making any money. So, that was my thesis. And I said that it's not possible for an academy, for Alan to give 800 million to an academy, come what may. And that's what happened. Alan has dropped out of the race to buy an academy. And now an academy founders are just trying to go out of the business by giving the reins to somebody else. Interestingly, this is what they were also trying to do earlier, and they have this AI thing because Unacademy's business has essentially gone offline now, and that wasn't what the founders intended to do, start another coaching institute. So they are basically looking at they have been looking at moving out of the biz, but they weren't being able to sell the company. So now selling the company be damned, they just want out. And very interestingly, they are trying to exit while spinning out their new venture and raising money for it, which is again something Bhavish Agrawal has done and other people have done, that their core businesses while struggling have led to golden parachutes of sorts while beginning with new businesses. So that's okay, but that conflict of interest isn't that hard to solve if that new business also allots shareholding to the parent business which led to, and it starts like a subsidiary or a sister concern. And but that's not the play that these people want. So they want an independent play yet again while drawing resources from the original company, which is what Snapdeal's founders also did. So they withdrew salaries from Snapdeal, 50 crore salaries a year, and then they started this venture capital firm. They started investing in startups with that money while also doing secondary sales in Snapdeal. So they were building Snapdeal, but at the same time selling Snapdeal to build other companies, to fund other companies, while also drawing Snapdeal. All while Snapdeal also lost money. So this is very similar to an academy. This is very similar to Ola, and that's what it is. So it's pretty. It's gonna be a tough road. It has been a tough road, but let's see how tough it gets now. No surprise, by the way. I wrote this a year ago. That in fact, when all the coaching institutes and all these VC companies were beginning with the edtech thing, the whole digitization and remote learning, it was very weird. But they all lapped into it at once, and they created a bubble. The biggest of which was Byju's, and then Unacademy and others. The second news is Oyo is meeting investment banks for third IPO attempt. So apparently they've not given up on the third IPO attempt. SoftBank had said that they can't IPO because an IPO would be catastrophic. Their earnings are not cool. Apparently, that was said to have shut down their third IPO attempt, but it's
Meeting
not really
investment banks for third
showing
IPO
that.
attempt. So apparently they've not.
Sorry about that. So now Oyo is trying to go for another IPO, $6 to $7 billion, and nobody knows what's gonna happen there. So again, a very interesting news. But what's to be noted is that Oyo was trying to IPO in 2021 at a price of $12 billion. Then it came down to $10 billion. Then it came down to 7 8 billion dollars. Then it raised money at 3.5 or 2.5 billion dollars, and now it's going to again IPO. It's trying to IPO at $6 to $7 billion, or maybe $5 billion. You ever wonder why this is happening? I've written about this multiple times, but if you notice why this is happening, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be very fascinating why this is happening. So in 2000, before 2021, uh, what happened was Ritesh Agrawal took a personal loan of $2.2 billion. I mean, Oyo basically had a share buyback led by Ritesh Agrawal, where he borrowed 1.5 billion and 1.8 billion, 300 million in personal capacity, and 1.5 billion by RA Hospitality to buy back shares from the existing guys, Sequoia and other people. Now those shares were bought at a $10 billion valuation in 2019, I guess. And then they wanted to IPO like very soon at a valuation of $12 billion, right? But that didn't surface. That didn't happen. I mean, of course, how can it? It's very weird, right? So then they tried to again IPO at a lower valuation because earnings fell flat, everything fell flat. Became very clear that the business is not what it was promised for, and then the valuation just kept falling off the cliff for Oyo from 12 billion, 10 billion, 8 billion, 6 billion to the final resuscitation round. I call it resuscitation round because that's what it was. If that round, friends and family, the family office round, wouldn't have been materialized, that 35 million, Oyo might have had serious cash flow issues. So it brought those investors, those Indian family offices at 2.5, $3.5 billion valuation, two and a half, I guess, just so it could promise this IPO to them because they just invested last year at a valuation of 2.5 billion, and now they will be looking at their shareholding essentially doubling. That's the promise to them, but it wasn't taken uh, without a pinch of salt by SoftBank. SoftBank said that you cannot IPO now, but Oyo doesn't have an option to not IPO. That's the beauty of it, because if you know what I'm talking about, you'll know that if Oyo fails to IPO this year by the end year, you know, Ritesh Agrawal's personal loan, which he had taken to buy back the shares, will have sort of a margin call because it needs to pay those people. Now, when Oyo is trying to pay, Ritesh Agrawal is trying to personally pay back his loan for the one which he took for share buyback, he doesn't have that money. He obviously doesn't have $2.5 billion or $1.5 billion or whatever. So that loan was guaranteed by SoftBank. So essentially, if Oyo doesn't IPO right now, Soft Ritesh Agrawal's shares in Oyo would be taken, would be gobbled by SoftBank. And if that happens, Ritesh is out essentially. So what right now is happening, if you read between the lines, you'll understand that it's just a very complicated safe face or save space kind of a move. Because if it goes out right now, it goes out. And that's it. That's the end of it. That's the end of the journey. You'll see in economic times, Ritesh is finally stepping down after building the company for 10 years. This is kind of, it won't be an impolite exit, but it will be. But if it gets the IPO, then what's going to happen is that he might just be able to pay some of the loan, and Oyo also might just be able to pay some of the loan back to its creditors, because not just Ritesh Agrawal, Oyo also took a lot of debt, term loans, to essentially buy the Motel 6 and everything. Now their payments are also coming to, you know, the due date. But the earnings which Oyo is making right now, 625 crores, it's not enough to even cover the ground. It can't cover the cost of capital. It can't cover the debt, because those debt that debt term loans are at 14%. And if you look at those 600 million term loans at 14%, you're gonna it's impossible for the company to pay. So in nutshell, Oyo is a dumpster fire, unfortunately. And what these people are trying to do right now is that they're trying to dump that dumpster fire on the retail investors. It has been the case. So if you look at the real travesty is not what happens now. The real question to ask is, what if their first IPO attempt at $12 billion succeeded? What then? Because at that time, you would have been looking at these people making a killing for themselves, but at the same time, screwing the retail investors. Absolutely. Because say what you want to say about Paytm, but it had a lot of cash in hand and it didn't have debt. Like killing debt all over the place. These people don't have cash in hand, they have killing debt all over the place. The founder has debts. If this IPO doesn't materialize, he'll have to take an exit from the company. His shares will be taken over by SoftBank. Somebody else is going to run the company. Then, you know, the other entities of Oyo are going to be sold off to pay the term loans. It's just a dumpster fire. But these people are trying to pour that dumpster fire on retail investors, which is very tricky. And you know what? I predict that this is going to succeed. I think it has a fair chance of going ahead. They'll have an IPO. Mutual funds are going to subscribe to it. People are going to lose money, and that's going to be business as usual. But it is what it is. So that's with Oyo. Another great news, which is not news to anyone who has been listening or paying attention, is that Ola has lost ground. Ola Electric, which is trying to raise money yet again, 1.7 thousand crores, has lost ground. The number one pole position is now with TVS, not TVF, Bajaj Auto, then Ola, and then Ather. In May 2025, 25% goes to TVS, 22.6 goes to Bajaj, 20 goes to Ola, and Ather is at 13.1. So you're basically looking at Ola losing ground to the incumbents in the e-scooter space. Now, if you're listening to that, and if you've been paying attention to this market, the electric wheeler, two-wheeler market, you will know that there were two companies who had effectively been ruling the electric vehicle market, the two-wheeler. They were number one Hero Electric and number two Okinawa. Okinawa was at one point number one, Hero Electric was number two. But they were essentially the market leaders with over 60% collective share or 70%, maybe more. But both of those companies are now out of the play. Okinawa is struggling to survive. It's very close to the sad winding down phase, and Hero Electric is done. Hero Electric is declaring bankruptcy and they have problems with payments and stuff. So both of those companies which were leaders in EV are now no more in the market. The same happen to Ola Electric? It is possible. It's definitely possible, but not probable, because Ola Electric is very big. It's too big. It has a lot of money, a lot of people. And when something becomes too big to fail, it's possible that it survives somehow. But I don't have hopes for Ola Electric, and certainly for the shareholders of Ola Electric. They are in a big trouble, man. It's gonna be very difficult for these guys. So that's with the Indian startup ecosystem today. Big three: Unacademy, Ola, Oyo, all of three. And I have written about all three of them very, very extensively. And if you go back to my writings, like 3 years ago, you'll know exactly that this was. It just takes time for things to come back to common sense. It takes time. All you have to do is wait, because things generally revert to where they make sense. It just takes time. What's very interesting is that Oyo could even begin as a company, because if you think about it, the thesis of Oyo was that I'll put the small, very small mom and pop hotel rooms, shacks in an umbrella and promise standardization, like tech enabled standardization. If you've ever been to a hotel, a small hotel, a mom and pop shack, you know how those guys operate. If you've been to a five star, you know how those guys operate. Even five stars with very solid standard operating procedures cannot promise standard experience. A Marriott in Nigeria is very different from a Marriott in somewhere else. Marriott, whatever the pronunciation is. But Oyo said that I'm gonna offer the same experience in Vikasnagar near Vikaspuri and Andheri and Ahmedabad, and somebody actually paid money to them for this promise, which is which is unbelievable. Can you imagine somebody saying that to you, that I'm gonna bring standardization to people in a service heavy business through technology, and somebody's gonna be, yeah, that sounds good, man, take my money. But that happened with Oyo. That happened with Oyo, and that happens in the world. So, businesses are all about luck, I guess. Anyway, L&T to ramp up defense play to billion-dollar biz. I'm very bullish about Indian defense as a market for investing and as a market for creation. In fact, fun story, this is why I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. This is why I became a mechanical engineer, because I was so fascinated with defense tech. As a child, I used to watch Weapon Masters and all those Discovery Channel shows. Dogfight, History Channel used to have Dogfight, Weapon Masters, Future Weapons. I have still got them downloaded in my older laptops. It's very interesting. But that's gonna come to pass, right? Because defense is having two big news attempts. One is fifth generation fighters are trying to take off in India. They are trying to have a bid where they make a prototype of the fifth generation aircraft in India. So HAL, Tata, and Adani, and all of these people are trying to will be bidding for it, either solo or together, and they'll make the pilot. And for the pilot, they've given away like 15,000 crore rupees. So whoever wins that, uh, you know, project will be very lucky, and so will its shareholders be. And that's very interesting because Indian Air Force is seriously lacking a lot of squadrons. That's I discussed this in the last two episodes as well, and that's true because we need more planes. We need more fighter planes. We have a very bad history with making our own. Tejas was conceptualized in 80s, and it took like 30 years for that plane to actually fly and become a part of the force. But now it's happening very quickly. India is ramping up its defense spend, which is very important, and I hope more of it happens because, full disclosure, I like defense companies as investments. So that's with the defense. L&T is trying to make its defense business big, and fifth generation aircrafts could be happening. By the way, fifth generation aircraft was also a very bad investment for US. F-35 took a lot of money, didn't provide anything. It proved to be extremely costly for its value, and but China is testing sixth generation aircrafts while we are at fifth generation. China is actually going sixth generation, which is, so China is a different beast altogether, of course. Now, very very interestingly, impeachment motion against Justice Verma. Do you remember that news where a judge had cash was found at his place when he was actually away from house, and it got caught the house caught fire, and then they found like bundles of cash at his place. That judge, uh, they had a hearing for him, the closed door. They found him guilty. Apparently, they asked him to resign. He said, "No, I'm not gonna resign." They transferred him to Allahabad High Court before that. He said, "I'm not gonna resign." And then what happened was very interesting. Now it's going to go to the Parliament, Rajya Sabha, and they will try to impeach the judge. Now this is huge because impeachment has never happened since independence. Five high court and Supreme Court judges have faced impeachment, but not a single one was removed. So India is a very very good country to be a judge, because you can just do what you want essentially with no recourse, and chill essentially, which is what's happening here. So maybe Justice Verma is thinking that you can't do anything about it, man. And he'll be right, maybe. Most likely he'll be right, but let's see. It's a very interesting. So in the last session, I talked about legal cases and how they're so interesting, right? So imagine this: Bhushan Steel was classified as an NPA, IBC, NCLT. Everybody, it was a big uh, dumpster fire again. Its entire thing happened where it was supposed to get sold, and dues were supposed to get recovered. JSW acquired it in 2021. JSW acquired it, took it back from the insolvency court and everything, and it acquired Bhushan Steel. It made the investments, everything happened. And in 2025, on May, just 2nd May, Supreme Court has ruled JSW's takeover illegal. So after 3 years of investing in a company, after buying a company, and 3 years of investing in a company, Supreme Court said just return the company to the NCLT guys or whoever, and they will. You have to, whoever you paid, they will pay you back. Refund. It has to be refunded, and then the company will be sold piecemeal so that the committee of creditors can get money. Now, interestingly, JSW said that if you do this, it's going to be a bit of a hassle because we took loans from foreign banks to pay for this. And it's going to be a very, very big problem, because if you reverse a transaction like that of like tens of thousands of crores, it's going to be a big deal. So, Supreme Court has stayed that order now, and they're thinking about it. The trouble is that there are 3,000 crores which were supposed to be paid by JSW to the banks who Bhushan Steel owed money to. So Bhushan Steel owed money to these banks. There was a misappropriation of fund or something like that. So Bhushan Steel had to give them money. Now Bhushan Steel got acquired by JSW, and JSW was supposed to recover that money and then pay to the banks, right? Then what happened was JSW bought Bhushan Steel, maybe made the recovery, but didn't give it to the banks because it said there was a period till which that offer was valid. The benefit offer, so to speak, benefit offer was valid. They didn't take that money during that benefit offer, so we don't owe them money. The 3,000 crores basically wasn't paid to the banks. So they, and then this whole every case like this, it's a masterclass in story. What a story! I mean, just imagine what a story this is. Now, the Bhushan Steel founders are saying no, they must return the company because they might just be having hopes that when the company returns to the NCLT, they might want to take it back and then they would play with the banks or whatever. It's very, very interesting. I discussed the same thing with the future retail Kishore Bayani venture yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Then another very interesting phase is Donald Trump fighting against Howard. Donald Trump is fighting against Howard. He's cancelled $3 billion in Howard payments and given them to uh, he's offered to give that money, those $3 billion, to trade schools, the trade colleges, the vocational courses. That's like, because Harvard has $30 billion in endowments, doesn't need that money, and those trade schools could use that money, and then a lot of middle class people could go to those trade schools. But Harvard is saying that it's not right because uh, we have an obligation to the society and so on. What's very interesting, and I'm not making this up. It's gonna sound very funny, but I'm not making this up. A star business professor at Harvard, Tina Monchio or somebody, she was writing research papers on honesty. Okay, she published like four researches on honesty, and those researches have found to be falsified. So she was basically lying about lying in the business world. Can you believe this? So this business professor, the star business professor of Harvard, was writing research papers on honesty and the lack of it in the business world. But that research was falsified. And Harvard is now fired her. But things just keep getting better and more interesting. It's just unbelievable. So Harvard says that a lot of things, why we get foreign students is because if foreign students pay full tuition. So people are like, "Were Americans will Americans not be willing to pay full tuition for Harvard degree?" Said yes, but if they're not enough Americans to actually fill Harvard seats. So these are the kind of arguments that are coming forward. It's just absolutely embarrassing to everybody who looks up to these guys, like the Harvard professors. I wrote a very big piece on Claudine Gay, who used to be the head of Harvard, and her entire career, she was a 52-year-old lady or something. Her entire career of 30 years was a fraud. She wrote nothing. She had nothing for research papers. She had no business being anywhere other than her house. And she was the head of Harvard. She was the president of Harvard, Claudine Gay. And then she was fired for being incompetent because her entire career was a lie. Like perhaps Kamala Harris. But it's all fun. It's a lot of fun. Oyo, as we've discussed, Naukri's revenue is up. InfoEdge says its quarter 4 revenue is up, which is interesting because I am not very bullish on the whole recruitment scene anymore, unfortunately. I don't think it has a lot of meat going forward. There's gonna be problems. There could be problems, and there are problems exactly. But it says they've picked up, and I'm very happy for it because InfoEdge is, of course, one of the iconic companies in the Indian startup ecosystem. Nobody comes close. Uh, Rakesh Gangwal again is selling more shares. This is not news. There's a very interesting news here which takes time for people to understand. Like US Treasury yields dip on Japan's likely bond shift. So this is complicated for people to understand. What does this mean? What do you mean by this? US Treasury yields dip on Japan's likely bond shift. So here's how to look at it. In very simple words, if you try to read this article, it's going to be very difficult because half of these macroeconomic bond yield terms don't land essentially. But what it means is very simple, and it shows how the globe trades amongst itself, the finance world. Now, Japan is looking at issuing fewer long term Japanese government bonds. The Japan is not going, it's looking at a little less bond sales for itself, which means the competition in the bond market will decrease, which means US bonds uh, might just sell more, which means the treasury yields will get lower. You understand how this operates? Japan is sells bonds, US sells bonds, everybody sells bonds. Japan sells less bonds now, US bonds go slightly high in demand. If bonds slightly go high in demand, treasuries come down. So that's you know the treasury yield comes down. It's very interesting, and it's very interesting to know about these things because this is how the globe operates, and not many people understand how these things work because they are so complicated at the uh, if you just observe them from afar. Exports, Indian exports are basically going up, and Indian exports are expected to reach $1 trillion. $1 trillion. That's great, right? That's awesome. Indian exports, if go $1 trillion, it's gonna be a big jump for the product economy. Indian GDP is at 4 trillion. You have 1 trillion coming from exports. Well, that's not the right way to look at it mathematically, but Indian exports were like 880 billion last year. And if they're growing at this pace, it means well. And it could just go even higher because now that India is trying to grow its base, exports have to be a big component to it. I'll give you a very interesting case study which happened. Until 2014, India exported zero smartphones, right? So essentially, what India did was just India began the smartphone manufacturing, but it was essentially an assembly play. People said no, it's just assembly. A lot of Raghuram Rajan types said no, there's no point, it's gonna be low end, there's no point, give this money to these people, and so on and so forth. But that assembly unit operation started generating a lot of value for India because some of that started going to exports. In 2021 or 2, 2017 to 22, India made its first profit of $70 million from smartphone exports. And now Indian smartphone exports are very valuable. Now, many people will argue that it's still mostly assembly, but now some of the parts are also getting assembled, manufactured. Very small components are also getting manufactured in India, which sort of creates that ecosystem. Similar is going on with this chip thing, which is supposed to start soon. Because if these things, they have a lot of cascading effects. So let's say if you have an assembly plant, okay, it just assembles. Five people from that plant are very entrepreneurial, and they say, hey, I'm gonna start my own thing. I'm gonna start a trading operation or a manufacturing operation or something. And when that happens, it becomes that starts a new company, and then starts a new company, and somebody essentially manufactures the part. And that's how the automotive industry began. So if you read Hero's biography, Four Brothers and the Revolution, it's Brijmohan Lal's Brijmohan Lal Munjal's biography, autobiography, sorry, biography written by his son Sunil Khan Munjal. It's a very good example of how manufacturing has cascading effects, and that's the reason why Punjab became so rich like 30 years ago, because of the whole economy. So Goel, Mr. Piyush Goel sir, is trying asking exporters to leverage FTAs. Now a lot of people will say that, do you know smartphone in India manufacturing doesn't have a value addition norm. So in US, in order to claim to be a manufacturer, you have to bring something, add value, and then package it to make a product. In India, repackaging is also considered as manufacturing. Okay, just repackaging of core components is also considered manufacturing. But that's no problem because that's one place to start. When somebody doesn't know how things open, repackaging is also a very interesting and important aspect. So, we talked about it, and that's it. That's pretty much it for for today. Ah, sorry, I missed a very important article. Tesla has halved its sales in Europe despite the market going up. So electric vehicle market is going up in Europe, 30% it grew, but Tesla's sales has gotten halved. And people are saying that it has to do with Elon Musk's political endeavors. in not just America but Germany as well, because he was trying to back AFD and so on and so forth. My question to everybody in this thing, no matter where you stand politically, is that just 3 weeks or a month ago, uh, these people were vandalizing Tesla cars. There was widespread terrorism on Tesla cars, right? If you remember, as soon as Elon Musk uh, exited Doge, as soon as that happened, that stopped. Like all the protesting, all the vandalizing, all the extremely inflammatory movement against Elon Musk has instantly stopped as soon as he stepped away from Doge. So, what does it say about the movement? You know, what does it say about the movement? Was it a people's movement or was it a paid movement? Or was it no movement at all? Was it just political uh, knee jerks happening at somebody's contribution? It's a very interesting thing to think about. Not leaving you, you know, it's not a political question, it's just a question of thought. Elon Musk was at Doge, everything started to burn. Teslas were burning all over the world. It was just crazy. Elon Musk steps away from Doge, everything stops. That's interesting, right? So, with that, we'll end today's uh, Thinker's Frequency. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Do you think Apple will manufacture in India despite Trump's pressure? Well, that's a very interesting question and a very important question. Will Apple manufacture in India despite Trump's pressure? I think yes. Apple will have to manufacture in India despite Trump's pressure uh, because US doesn't have the leverage right now, unfortunately. Uh, it takes time for things to get built up. So what will happen is while Apple promises some plants in India and starts work here, Apple will also start work there to sort of counterbalance, because you'll have to import from somewhere. If China is your clear adversary, and it is, you'll have to import from somewhere else who's not as adversarial as China. But you cannot, certainly not, just instantly stop importing from everywhere and start making at home. It takes time, right? And people would want to make in America now that the government is proactive. So what happened from 1990 onwards is that they just sold out the country. They just sold out the country. The McKinsey types, the globalists, they just sold the country out. They put China in WTO, Bill Clinton, and started offshoring like crazy. They said their thesis was that when we offshore these low value manufacturing jobs to outside, US will go high value jobs. So US will keep progressing and do high value jobs while these people just do the grunt work. Okay? But it never happens like that. Things begin with grunt work, as I explained just like 10 minutes ago. Things begin with grunt work, and then some entrepreneurial guys in that grunt work plant think of something new, and then things go up the value chain, because that's how things always happen. That's how things happen in US as well. But these people, these McKinsey types and globalists, thought that US will keep going high value while China will keep doing the grunt work, and that will be the order of day. That's and that just collapsed on its face because China kept doing the low value and then also started doing the high value, and it's now China is a neck and neck player, a bigger economy than US in PPP terms, and it's screwed US upside down and sideways in circles. So it'll take time for Apple to set themselves up in US, but they won't stop in India. I'm sure. Might scale down efforts in a while, but they'll probably not stop all the way. That's my thought. Any other question? We can just, before we start our day at 9 a.m., before we punch in and before we finish this coffee, I had a lovely time on the third episode of Thinker's Frequency. I hope you did as well. Trump has recently given a statement that 25% tariff would be on imports of Apple in US. Yes, that's correct. And I discussed that actually in the last episode that uh, you will need to incentivize companies to build in US. Otherwise, they simply won't. They won't have any incentive to do that. And a very big incentive is deterring them from making in US. Oh, in China or in India or any place else. So that's what Trump is trying to do. But even if it leads a tariff, some of it will get absorbed by Apple, or that tariff will be put again. An easy way for Apple to just put that tariff story out is just announce an equal investment in US, and that will be a good signal to the US economy that Apple wants to make things here as well. And that's probably, I see what happens. So let's see. It's just going to be out. I think it will take 3 4 months or 6 months for Apple to say that, hey, look at this, we are trying this, and so on and so forth. Any other questions? Boom, 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 boom. Trump has recently given state. Okay, yeah, I read that. So that's that, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you enjoyed this analysis and it didn't lead to paralysis. And that things keep getting better for you. Have a beautiful day at work. Have a beautiful, beautiful day at work, and see you tomorrow. Bye bye.